name is Carrie Westbrook, and I'm one of the health coaches here at HealthMed. And today we are going to be talking about what is in the food that we eat and the products that we use every day. This is just an outline of what we'll be going over today. So I'll start by going over the FDA, who they are, and what they do, and how that affects the products and food that is available to us in the US. Then we'll go into food, talking about the ingredients that are in different foods to watch out for and how to read the ingredient labels on the food that you buy. Then we'll go into different products, so whether that is household products that you use, cosmetic products, and again, talking about what ingredients to look out for and how to notice if something is an ingredient or a product that you should avoid. And then all of this is very overwhelming and it's a lot to take in. So I am going to finish up by summarizing different resources that are available to you so that you can kind of feel better about shopping when you're looking for different food and products to look out for. So to start, we're going to be going over the FDA, who they are and what they do. So the FDA stands for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. They are a federal agency of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and they're responsible for protecting the U.S. by controlling and supervising a number of different products and foods that we regularly consume. So it's just good to know what they do and what they don't do, what they regulate and what they don't regulate. So if you're assuming that everything that you're intaking or buying is regulated by the FDA, that may not be true. Like I just said, the FDA regulates a lot of products and food that we regularly consume, but they do not regulate everything. Maybe under the assumption that they do regulate everything and so that it's safe to buy anything that is at the store, but that's not the case. So they don't regulate all dietary and herbal supplements. They don't regulate essential oils. They don't regulate CBD, as well as a number of other things. And so that is good information to note. So that means that you have to kind of do your own due diligence and research the companies that you're buying these different products from and make sure that you really trust what they're putting in their products since they're not being regulated by the FDA. And another good thing to note is that drugs are considered unsafe until proven safe. So that means that drugs are not on the market unless the FDA has thoroughly looked into it, researched them, and make sure that they are safe. So on the other hand, dietary supplements are considered safe until proven unsafe. So that means dietary supplements can be sold before even being regulated or before being researched what's in them, unless something is, shows up that it's unsafe, then they take it off the market. So that's just a good thing to note. Now we're going to go into different food ingredients to avoid. There is a lot of different articles and opinions out there about what to avoid in your food, and it can be pretty overwhelming. So I wanted to narrow it down to four main categories to make it as simple as possible. So to start out, one thing just to know is with all of these, the main reason that we're wanting to avoid them is because they're not naturally occurring in our food, and so therefore they can affect our bodies in ways that we don't want them to. Some of them are possible carcinogens, and there's just some gray area with if these things are healthy for us or not. So the first one is high fructose corn syrup. So it's a sweetener made from cornstarch, and it's normally used just because it's easier to handle and it's more cost effective than sugar. So it's kind of, a shortcut. So it's found in a lot of foods and cereals and soft drinks, so a lot of processed things, and it can increase your triglycerides. It can increase your fat storing hormones, and it can even drive people to overeat and gain weight. The next ingredient to look out for is any type of preservative. There's a number of different ones and they all have really big names, but maybe just look over this list and become familiar with them. So BHA, BHT, potassium sorbate, all those different ones. So again, I later will go into different resources that can help you remember what these are, but just try and familiarize yourself with these different preservatives. So a lot of these are, again, just in different processed foods. So the whole reason you have a preservative is to keep the food from going bad. And so they are needed in a lot of foods, but one really big thing to look out for is just if a food has a really long shelf life, then it probably has a preservative in it. The next thing to look out for is artificial sweeteners, colors, and flavors. So there's a lot under that umbrella, but artificial sweeteners, so anything that is not pure sugar, so like Equal, Sweet and Low, Splenda, etc. Looking out for artificial colors, so this is found in everyone's food, but specifically a lot of children's foods. They try and color it and make it look nice and bright so it's more appealing to kids. So just look out for artificial colors, especially like the blues and the reds and the greens. And then also artificial flavors. These are just derived from chemicals made in a lab, so they offer no nutritional value, and they show up in almost all processed foods, including different breads and cereals and flavored yogurt. And lastly, the last one I wanted to include on this list of ingredients to avoid are hydrogenated or fractionated oils. So these are just oils that have gone through a process, either heating the oil and then cooling it. And the main thing is that they are oftentimes healthy in their natural state, but since they've gone through this process, they are quickly turned into unhealthy versions of those oils. So if you see hydrogenated anywhere on the ingredients list, then try to avoid that food. Organic food. This has become something that is very popular today, and it's a very hot topic. But the whole reason you want to eat organic food is because you're trying to avoid pesticides that are found in a lot of food. But you don't necessarily have to eat all food organic. It can be a lot more expensive to buy foods organic. So I wanted to give you this pretty popular list of the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 to help you decide of which foods you should eat organic if you're not going to go fully organic. So the Dirty Dozen are a list of a dozen different produce or fruits and vegetables that contain are more likely to contain a lot of pesticides. So if you were going to buy some food organic, these would be the ones to mainly focus on. So some of those big ones would be apples, strawberries, grapes, bell peppers, potatoes, cucumbers, and kind of the thing to notice is that a lot of the ones that have a thinner skin on the outside are more likely to contain pesticides because the fruit itself or the produce itself can absorb those pesticides versus the list of the Clean 15 tend to have thicker skins on them. So if you can't specifically remember what is on which list, that's kind of a good rule of thumb. If it has a very thin skin to it or no skin at all, like an apple or a strawberry or grapes, then you are more likely to want to buy that organic. So then the Clean 15, again, they are less likely to contain as many pesticides. They typically have a thicker skin, so the fruit or the vegetable itself is a little bit more protected. So those are, avocados, sweet corn, pineapple, mangoes, cantaloupe, things like that. There's a lot more I could go into as far as the ingredients in our food, but I wanted to leave it nice and simple, talk about organic food and just maybe 4 ingredients in your food to avoid. So now we can move on to different chemicals to avoid in products. So this list contains chemicals that have been shown to be possible carcinogens. They disrupt hormones, they can affect fertility, they can cause damage to your liver and kidneys, as well as a list of other possible negative effects. So again, same with the food ingredients. There is a long list, a lot of articles, a lot of opinions about what you should avoid in your products, but I wanted to make it as simple as possible and leave you with just a handful of the most popular ones or the most common ones that you want to, be more conscious of if they're in your products or not. So starting out with the first one, parabens, they're used as a preservative in a lot of personal care products. This is kind of a hot word. You probably have heard it a lot. So this one might be kind of easy to remember. So parabens, try and avoid those in your products. Phthalates is next. They're also found in a lot of products. They can affect your livers and kidneys, cause birth defects, possibly decrease sperm counts and fertility. The next ingredient to avoid is BPA. It's an industrial chemical that's been used to make certain plastics and resins since the 60s. So this is a big one to avoid. You want to look and see if it says BPA free or not on it. Next ingredient is SLS or SLES. It's found in a number of different personal care products, especially ones that foam. So any shampoo, body wash, or face wash, or soap that foams. It can be fun and everything, but oftentimes SLS or SLES has to be in there in order to in order to make it foam. So just look out for those types of products. And lastly, the last one I wanted to include is synthetic fragrance. So this is just a catch-all word that companies can use to hide a lot of different chemicals under that. So any chemical that has a smell that is in there so it can smell good, they can just say synthetic fragrance instead of specifically saying what chemical is in it. So it could be completely safe, but also it could be a different chemical that you don't necessarily want to have on you during the day. In addition to the specific ingredients and products to keep in mind and to avoid, I wanted to also just give you a handful of products themselves that typically have a lot of those ingredients in them that you may not think about. One big one is candles. They smell great, but a lot of them include a lot of synthetic fragrance. The actual wax that they have may not be the best one, and also the type of wick that they use can really determine if it's something good to be inhaling or not. So you want to try and use beeswax-based scented candles when you can. They just tend to have a cleaner burn. And then also use candles made with a cotton or paper wick. It's a lot better than a lead wick because they don't contain any paraffin. Another thing to keep in mind is the type of detergent that you're using. A lot of detergents have lots of scents and dyes in them to make them brighter, blue or green color, and then also just smell good to help your laundry smell good. But just keep in mind the type of ingredients they have to put in there in order for that to happen. So you might want to try and use a detergent that is a little bit cleaner. Another thing to keep in mind is the type of sunscreen that you're using. A lot of them can contain phthalates and parabens, so just look on the ingredient list for that. Insecticides, of course, or any type of chemical that you're trying to use to kill anything in your yard or your house, you want to be aware of what is in that product. And then lastly, deodorant contains a lot of deodorants contain aluminum, and this is kind of a big thing out in the market now. A lot of companies are kind of starting to catch on to this, and that people are wanting to have options of deodorant that is aluminum free. Another thing to keep in mind when you're deciding what food and what products to buy is to not be fooled by a company's label or their branding. It's become very popular to want to buy natural and all organic green products, and companies have really noticed that, and so they're taking advantage of that, and so they are starting to really rebrand and try and come across as an all natural or green brand. So don't be fooled by it because it doesn't necessarily mean that they are, what they're trying to make you believe they are. So really, again, look at the ingredients. Just because something is has a tree on the picture on the front, or a river, or says that it's green or all natural, doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe. Natural does not necessarily mean safe. So just keep that in mind and don't be just blindly grabbing a product just because it looks like it's a more natural option. All of this can be very overwhelming, and it can be a lot to try and figure out what is safe or better to buy or not. So I just wanted to give you some practical steps. You don't necessarily have to memorize all those different chemicals and different things that I mentioned that are in products, but some good things, some practical steps to keep in mind is to try to buy organic when possible. Again, you don't necessarily have to buy every single food organic, but know which foods are better to buy organic. You can try and eat whole foods and cook at home. So instead of buying foods that have a long shelf life that are processed, try and eat whole fruits, vegetables, fresh meats, and try and cook at home because you don't necessarily know what is in the products or the foods that you're consuming when you're eating out, but you can control what you're eating when you're cooking yourself at home. Again, you want to make sure that you're reading the labels, not just trusting what the branding looks like on the outside. So actually flip the food or the product over and look at what's actually in that food. Look at the ingredient list. And then lastly, one of the best tips is to use resources to help. Like I keep saying, a lot of this can be overwhelming. There's a lot of information to remember. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk about what some of those resources are. I narrowed down the resources list just to 3 of my favorite resources to use just so it wouldn't be too overwhelming. So the first one is the Chemical Cuisine website. It's a website page maintained by the Center for Science in the Public Health Interest, and they rank the safety of food additives, and they also just have a lot of other resources and articles that you can read if you're interested in learning more. The next one is the next two are actually apps. So one is for food and one is for products. So the first app is the Shop Well Better Food Choices app. Both of these are free apps in the App Store, so you can just search it in your App Store and download it. But the Shop Well app allows you to scan any food item at the grocery store, and it gives you all the information about that product and all of its ingredients. So you don't necessarily have to memorize all the different ingredients to avoid if you're using these apps, because you can just scan it and it'll tell you right away if it has better ingredients or not as good ingredients. And then the last app is the Think Dirty app, and this is similar to the Shop Well Better Food Choices app, except it is for products, not for your food. So very similar, you can scan the barcode of home and cosmetic products, and then it will give them a rating from 0 to 10 on how harmful its ingredients are, and it'll also give you that list of specifically what ingredients are in it that are good and that are bad. Thanks for watching and listening to the presentation today. If you have any questions at all, you can comment on this video or send us an email at the health coach email, or message one of the health coaches like me or Emily or Heidi on the Motivation Alliance. So thanks for listening.